Scene 1. Night Drive. The city was still awake, even if most of its people were pretending otherwise. Neon bled across wet pavement. Traffic lights blinked against glass towers. Somewhere in the distance, a siren rose, faded, then disappeared behind the sound of rain. Detective Delilah Monroe drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting near the radio. She did not speed. She rarely did. Monroe believed panic made people sloppy. Speed was only useful when it had somewhere intelligent to go. In the back seat, Lomax sat upright, still as a statue. Most people called him Max. They did so carefully. The black Cane Corso watched the city pass through rain-streaked windows, his dark eyes tracking movement that most humans missed. He did not bark. He did not whine. He simply observed, just like Monroe. The police radio cracked through the quiet. Dispatcher. Possible overdose. Female. Mid-30s. Apartment 7C. Vesper Heights. Responding units on scene. Detective requested due to prior wellness checks at same address. Monroe's eyes lifted slightly to the rearview mirror. Max's ears shifted. Not much, just enough. Monroe noticed. She always noticed. The voice on the radio continued. Dispatcher. Victim identified as Elena Vale, 34. No signs of forced entry. No immediate threat on scene. Monroe turned down a narrow side street lined with old brick buildings and flickering storefront signs. The wipers dragged water from the windshield in tired, uneven strokes. No immediate threat. Her voice was quiet. Max remained still. That usually means nobody looked long enough. The city opened ahead of them, and Vesper Heights rose out of the rain like a building trying to forget what it had seen.
Scene 2. Vesper Heights. Vesper Heights was not luxurious. It was the kind of building real estate listings called historic when they meant old, and charming when they meant the elevator made sounds like regret. A patrol car sat outside the entrance with its lights flashing blue and red across the wet sidewalk. Monroe parked near the curb. Before she opened her door, she looked back. Max was already standing. Monroe. Easy. He waited. Only when Monroe stepped out did Max follow. Rain hit the brim of her dark hat and rolled off the shoulders of her long coat. She moved without hurry, badge clipped at her belt, gloved hand relaxed at her side. 2 uniformed officers stood under the awning. One of them, Officer Grant, straightened when he saw her. The other looked at Max and made the face people made when they suddenly reconsidered every decision that had brought them near a large dog at night.
Officer Grant. Detective Monroe. Grant. His eyes flicked to Max. You working tonight, too? Monroe looked down at Max. Max looked at Grant. Grant looked away first. Seems like it. Grant cleared his throat. Officer Grant. Medical examiner's on the way. Looks like an overdose. Pills near the couch. No forced entry. Neighbor called it in after she didn't answer texts. Monroe looked toward the building entrance. Who found her? Officer Grant. Neighbor across the hall. Tanya Brooks. Says they were friendly. Not close, but friendly. That means something different depending on who says it. Grant gave a tired half-smile. You ever meet a normal situation? Monroe started toward the door. Once. Grant waited. She glanced back. Turned out to be tax fraud. Grant blinked. Max walked past him like he had heard worse jokes.
Scene 3. The hallway. The hallway on the 7th floor smelled like old carpet, citrus cleaner, and something electrical burning behind the walls. Apartment doors lined both sides, each one wearing a different version of privacy. A wreath on 7A, 3 security locks on 7B, a faded welcome mat outside 7C that simply read, "Please don't." Monroe stopped and looked at it. Officer Grant noticed. Officer Grant. Victim had a sense of humor, apparently.
Monroe's gaze stayed on the mat. Monroe. Or boundaries. Inside apartment 7C, 2 officers moved around quietly. A crime scene tech photographed the living room. Rain tapped steadily against the windows. Max paused at the threshold. He lowered his head slightly. Not a growl. Not warning. Recognition. Monroe looked at him. Monroe. What is it? Max's eyes moved toward the kitchen. Monroe followed his gaze, then stepped inside.
Scene 4. Elena Vale's apartment. Elena Vale's apartment was small, but deliberate. Nothing expensive. Everything chosen. A gray sofa. A low wooden coffee table. A shelf of design books arranged by color. A desk near the window with a drawing tablet, 2 monitors, and a ceramic mug shaped like a sleeping cat. The kind of place someone built slowly, carefully, alone. Elena lay on the floor near the couch, covered now with a sheet from the waist down while the scene tech worked. Monroe did not look away. She never believed respect required avoidance. Respect meant seeing clearly. Elena was 34, but death had made her look younger and older at the same time. Her hand rested near the rug. Her fingernails were short, clean, painted pale blue. Near the couch sat an amber pill bottle. Beside it, a half-empty glass of water. A simple conclusion, placed neatly in plain sight. Too neatly. Monroe scanned the room. The pillows on the couch were aligned. The throw blanket folded. The desk organized. A single pen sat diagonally across a notebook. Monroe crossed to the desk and straightened the pen until it lined up with the edge of the page. Grant noticed. Officer Grant, you do that at home too? Only when things are crooked. That's most things. Exactly. The crime scene tech, Vera Lynn, looked up from her camera. Please tell me you're not rearranging my scene. Monroe lifted her hand away from the notebook. Your scene was emotionally distressed before I arrived. Vera sighed. That is not a category. It should be. Max padded silently near the kitchen, sniffed once, then sat beside the doorway. His body faced the apartment entrance, always between Monroe and the door. Vera looked at him. He always do that? Yes. Creepy. Monroe looked at Max. Effective. Scene 5. The first wrong note. Monroe crouched near the coffee table. Pill bottle. Glass of water. Phone. Tablet. Remote control. A small square coaster with a coffee ring. She studied each item like it had something to confess. The pill bottle label read, clonazepam. Prescribed 2 months earlier. Half the pills missing. Grant stood behind her. Officer Grant. Neighbors said Elena had anxiety, had been struggling lately. Missed work. Stopped answering people. Social media went dark about 3 weeks ago. Monroe turned the pill bottle slightly without moving it from its place. People with anxiety still lock doors. Door was locked. Chain? Grant looked toward the front door. Not engaged. Monroe looked at him. Grant sighed. Okay, that's something. It's not enough to be something yet. She stood and walked toward the kitchen. The kettle sat on the stove. Still warm. Not hot. Warm. A mug of tea rested on the counter. Chamomile. Honey pooled at the bottom, undissolved. Monroe lifted her gaze to the wall clock. 11:42 p.m. When was she pronounced? Officer Grant. 10:58. Monroe looked back at the mug. She made tea and didn't drink it.
Maybe she forgot. Monroe said nothing. Grant shifted. I hate when you do that. Do what? Make silence feel like paperwork. Vera snorted from the living room. Monroe looked again at the tea. Honey added, not stirred. That bothered her. Not because it proved anything. Because it interrupted the story the room was trying too hard to tell.
Scene 6. The neighbor. Tanya Brooks stood in the hallway, wrapped in a cardigan that looked like it had survived several emotional support eras. She was in her late 40s, hair pulled into a loose bun, eyes swollen from crying and not sleeping. Monroe stepped out of 7C with Grant beside her. Max sat just inside the doorway, visible, but still. Tanya kept glancing at him. Miss Brooks? Tanya. Everybody calls me Tanya. You called 911? Tanya nodded. Elena wasn't answering. She always answers eventually, even if it's just one of those little thumbs up things. You know? Like, I'm alive, leave me alone. Monroe watched Tanya's hands twist the edge of her sleeve. When did you last hear from her? Yesterday afternoon? Around 2? I brought her soup. Officer Grant. Soup? Tanya looked defensive. She was thin. Too thin. And I'm not one of those neighbors who just watches somebody disappear behind a door. Monroe's expression softened almost imperceptibly. What kind of soup? Grant looked at Monroe like the question had taken a wrong turn. Tanya blinked.
Lentil. Did she eat it? Tanya's eyes filled. I don't know. She said she would. Did she seem afraid? Tanya looked toward Elena's apartment. She seemed tired of being afraid. Monroe held on to that. Tired of being afraid was different from hopeless. Different shape. Different ending. Afraid of what? Tanya swallowed. Herself, I think. Monroe waited. Tanya kept talking. People usually did. She kept saying she couldn't trust her own memory. Like things she knew happened didn't happen. Or things she didn't remember, people told her she did. She laughed about it sometimes, but not funny laugh. More like if she didn't laugh, she'd break. Grant stopped writing. Monroe's eyes narrowed slightly. Who told her that? Tanya looked confused. What? Who told her she remembered things wrong? Tanya opened her mouth, then closed it. A flicker moved across her face. Memory, arriving late. Tanya, there was someone? Monroe said nothing. Tanya stared at the floor. Tanya. A counselor, maybe, or support group person. Elena said they were helping her process things. I never met them. Name? Tanya shook her head. I'm sorry. Monroe looked back into the apartment. Max was watching Tanya now. Not aggressive. Attentive. Did Elena ever mention feeling safe? Tanya's face changed. There it was. The second wrong note. Yesterday. Grant looked up. She said she finally understood something. Like a fog lifted. She smiled when she said it. Tanya's voice cracked. I hadn't seen her smile in months. Monroe looked back at the rain-slick window at the end of the hall. A fog lifted. Then she was dead. Scene 7. The digital trace. Elena's phone was unlocked by the time Monroe returned inside. Vera stood at the desk with gloves on, scrolling carefully. No obvious threatening texts. Last calls are mostly missed. One from Tanya, two from work, several blocked numbers from last week. Blocked by her or blocked by the caller? Vera looked at the screen. Caller ID blocked. Pattern? Same time range, between 1 and 2 a.m. Grant rubbed the back of his neck. Nothing good calls after 1 a.m. Babies. Grant blinked. Medical emergencies, bad decisions, occasionally raccoons. Raccoons call you? Not directly. Vera looked between them. I'm begging both of you to stop. Monroe held out her hand for the phone. Vera passed it over. Monroe scrolled through recent apps. Messages, browser, notes, email.
The email app showed one sent message. Timestamp, 10:11 p.m., 47 minutes before pronouncement. Recipient, Elena Vale. Sent to herself. Subject? No subject. Monroe opened it. The body contained one line. If anything happens to me, it finally makes sense now. The room seemed to quiet around the words. Grant leaned in. Officer Grant. That's strange. Monroe read it again. Then again. Max lifted his head. Monroe did not move. Officer Grant. Could still be suicidal ideation. Monroe's eyes remained on the screen. No. Grant waited. Monroe, people in despair usually explain pain, apologize, blame, say goodbye. She handed the phone back to Vera. This isn't goodbye. Then what is it? Monroe looked toward Alina's body. Recognition. Scene 8. Alina's desk. Monroe moved to the desk near the window. The drawing tablet screen had gone dark. Vera woke it carefully. A digital sketch filled the display. A woman standing in front of a mirror. But the reflection was not aligned. The woman faced forward. The reflection turned slightly away. In the corner of the image, written in faint handwritten text, were 3 words. Not mine anymore. Grant leaned closer. Officer Grant. That's unsettling. Vera. She was a designer. Maybe it's art. Monroe studied the image. Monroe. Art usually tells the truth first. People catch up later. Grant looked at her. Officer Grant. You say things like that on purpose? Usually. Monroe scanned the desk. Notebook. External drive. Sticky notes. A receipt from a late-night pharmacy. A business card tucked under the keyboard. She pulled it free. White card. Embossed lettering. New Harbor Wellness Collective. Underneath, Mara Venn, Trauma Recovery Facilitator. No license number. No degree credentials. Just a phone number and an address. Monroe turned the card over. On the back, Elena had written, "She knows before I say it." Grant read over her shoulder. Officer Grant. That sounds comforting? Monroe looked at him. Or invasive. Scene 9. Work call. Elena's laptop sat open, but asleep. Vera connected a forensic drive and began the careful process of imaging the system. While she worked, Grant stepped aside to call Elena's employer. Monroe remained by the window. Rain blurred the city into streaks of silver and purple.
Max came to sit beside her. He leaned slightly against her leg. Not much, just enough. Monroe rested 2 fingers briefly on the top of his head. Grant returned. Officer Grant. Her supervisor says Elena had been missing deadlines. Said she used to be sharp, reliable, kind of obsessive about details. Then something shifted. When? About 3 months ago. Monroe looked at the business card again. Same time she started counseling. Grant frowned. Officer Grant, you don't like the counselor. I haven't met the counselor. That was not a no. Monroe's mouth curved slightly, barely a smile. You're learning. Grant looked proud for half a second, then suspicious. Was that a compliment or a warning? Yes.
Scene 10. The email archive. Vera finally looked up from the laptop. Okay, that's interesting. Monroe turned. Elena wiped a large amount of email history 2 days ago. Not just deleted, purged, trash emptied, archive cleared. Officer Grant. Could she do that herself? Anyone can delete emails, but this looks deliberate, like someone wanted a clean slate. Monroe stepped closer. Or wanted to remove a pattern. Vera nodded slowly. Maybe, but she missed something. She clicked into a folder labeled Receipts. Grant leaned forward. Everybody has a receipts folder now? In this city, they should. Inside the folder was one archived thread. It had been hidden under an email rule that moved messages automatically. The subject line read, "You were never supposed to remember." No one spoke. The rain filled the silence. Monroe looked at the timestamp. 3 days before Elena's death.
Sender. Unknown. But the email body preview showed only one sentence. Stop digging before you become the proof. Grant's voice dropped. That changes things. Monroe did not answer immediately. She looked toward Elena. Then at the tea. Then at the pill bottle. Then back at the screen. The apartment had been telling one story. The email told another. And Monroe had learned a long time ago, when a room and a victim disagreed, believe the victim first. Scene 11. The first thread. Vera opened the archived thread. Most of the email was blank. No signature. No name. Just text. You were never supposed to remember. You were better when you trusted the process. Stop digging before you become the proof. Monroe read the lines without blinking. Grant's face hardened. Officer Grant, that's a threat. Monroe, it's control. Officer Grant, same neighborhood. Monroe, different house. Grant exhaled through his nose. You do that on purpose too? Sometimes. Vera scrolled down. A reply from Elena appeared beneath it. Sent the next morning. I know what you did to me. Then another line. And I know I'm not the only one. Grant looked at Monroe. Officer Grant, she knew something. Monroe's eyes stayed on the screen. She remembered something. Max stood. All 3 looked at him. His body had gone still in a different way now. Focused. His eyes fixed on the open apartment door. A shadow shifted in the hallway. Monroe turned. Tanya Brooks stood just outside 7C. Her face had gone pale. Detective? Monroe stepped toward her. Tanya? Tanya swallowed hard. Her eyes moved from Monroe to the laptop screen behind her. Then back.
I remember the counselor's name. Monroe waited. Tanya whispered it, like speaking too loudly might bring someone through the walls. Mara Venn. Monroe looked down at the business card already in her hand. Tanya saw it and started crying again. Not from grief this time. From fear. Elena said Mara helped her. Her voice trembled. But last week she told me something else. Monroe closer. What did she tell you? Tanya looked toward Elena's apartment, then back to Monroe. She said Mara didn't help her remember. A tear slipped down her cheek. She helped her forget.
Scene 12. Cliffhanger. The hallway seemed colder after that. Even the rain sounded farther away. Grant stopped writing. Vera slowly turned from the laptop. Monroe did not react dramatically. She did not need to. The room had already shifted. The case was no longer an overdose. It was no longer a tragic apartment death. It was a door. And Elena Vale had opened it just before someone closed her eyes forever. Monroe looked once more at the email thread. You were never supposed to remember. Max moved beside her, placing his body between Monroe and the hallway. Monroe looked down at him. His ears were forward, alert, listening. Somewhere below, in the bones of Vesper Heights, the elevator groaned to life. Someone was coming up. Monroe's hand lowered slowly to Max's collar, not to restrain him, to let him know she understood. The elevator bell chimed. The doors opened at the end of the hall. A woman stepped out in a cream coat, dry despite the storm outside. Calm, elegant, smiling softly. Her eyes found Monroe immediately. Then Max. Then apartment 7C. Officer Grant lowered his voice. Officer Grant. Do we know her? Monroe looked at the business card in her hand. Then at the woman standing in the hall. We do now. The woman's smile widened by a fraction. Mara Venn. Detective Monroe. Max growled. Low. Certain. Monroe's eyes did not leave Mara. Miss Venn. Rain tapped against the hallway window. The city held its breath.
Wait! Did you think that was it? No, we have more. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment. We have part 2 coming, and it's going to be a doozy.